We're using thrifted finds today to go from a pile of wood to this classic Halloween statement. Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. I was invited by these lovely ladies to make something for the Lasting Thrifted collab. How could I resist? Look at these stars. You'll find links to everyone's channels in the description box as well as the playlist. I'll be using the remains of some wooden garden stakes that I snagged from my sister and some MDF that my husband brought home from work. It was used to pack shelving or something, so he grabbed it, brought it home for me. It's awesome. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is work on my fence, since that's the most substantial part of this project. I'm going to give each of my fencing pieces a loose, rough coat of this lace chalk paint by DecoArt. It's an off-white, lovely, vintagey white. I really want this to look like it's borderline decrepit, so I'm keeping the paint really sketchy. I'm using my big square here to align my posts. They're about, I'd say, an inch apart. I'll connect them with these scraps of furring strips that I cut to size. They'll be attached with both wood glue and screws, so what I'm going to do is drill some pilot holes, then I'll add a dab of glue before screwing them into place. I'll attach these two pieces of stakes along the front and back of the fence to use it as a stand. I'll use two of these 2-inch corner brackets as well as wood glue to attach the back piece. Oh, that's right, I did use a wee dab of hot glue too. And I'm just going to hold that in place for a moment till it sets. Again, drilling pilot holes before screwing on the brackets. I used 3/4 inch wood screws to attach the brackets to the fence, and I'm just going to use some wood glue and a wee bit of hot glue to attach the front part. Now that the fence is assembled, I'll grunge it up a wee bit with some Jody black wax. This also could have been done with just regular old acrylic paint or chalk paint, just dry brushing it wherever you feel it needs to go. So what I did is I concentrated on the edges to kind of highlight them, and I made sure to get in between the posts, and I just kept going until I was happy with it. Here it is, all grunged up. So now we'll set that aside and we'll move on to the MDF section. So I uploaded my vintage images to Photoshop where I sized them and printed them out. I also removed all the color from them. So then what I did is I traced them onto my MDF and I cut them out using my scroll saw. Now that MDF had a shiny surface and I wasn't sure how well the paint would stick to it. So I gave each piece a coat of that lace chalk paint that I used earlier, just as a precaution. I'll give the cat 2 coats of black acrylic paint, including the sides. Don't mind the background noise, there's road work going on outside. Okay, now that he's dry, I attached the print onto my MDF with painter's tape, and I'm going to trace his features on with some weight transfer paper. Now, what I did is kind of cut out around him just so I didn't have all that extra paper hanging off the sides, and it also made it easier to line up his ears and, the sides of his body. I'll paint in the details with a liner brush and Ceramcoat Oyster white, which is a warm white, very similar to that lace color in the chalk paint that I used earlier. Now, I could have used my Silhouette Cameo to cut the details from vinyl, but I really wanted to paint them not only because I enjoy it, but I also really wanted a hand-painted look. But of course, you could absolutely even get kind of a hand-painted look if you did a reverse stencil with vinyl. So painting the cat white, adding your vinyl, then painting over the black, removing the vinyl would have given you a similar effect. I do like to hand paint, so here we go. I know that I've mentioned before that, I find it very meditative to paint, so maybe not everybody does. So if you're a stressor, you may want to use a vinyl cutter. That's always a very good option. But yeah, to me, it's very meditative. I don't know, I just love all the detail. I will say though, this was kind of confusing because there are very small spaces where there's black in between the white You'll see what I mean. I do bring the print down next to me to keep an eye on what I'm doing. And I had a picture of the actual clip art on my phone, so I could use that as a reference too. The only thing about that was the cat was reversed. So his winking eye was on the opposite side, so that was a little confusing. But anyway, I did get through it. And sometimes I'm not really sure how much to show you because I don't want you to get bored just watching, paint dry, right? But then other times people will comment and say, no, I like to watch it, when you're painting, so please leave that in. So we'll see how much of it actually winds up in the video because I do want to take into consideration the length of time since this is a collaboration and there are other videos that you're going to want to watch. Here I come back in and clean up some of the spaces, define them better with some black paint. Again, I'm using a really fine liner brush for this. To add some distressing, I dry brush the edges with that Oyster white. I did do a little on his body too. And now I give him a light sanding to give him that worn look. Onto that wee cutie jack-o'-lantern. I paint the orange sections with Americana Spice Pumpkin and I give it 2 coats. I do the little cone section of his hat orange as well, just following the classic clip art. I think these were like Beastle, is that how you say it? They're the Halloween collectibles. They did all the die cuts from like the early 1920s forward. I believe these 2 pieces are Beastle. I'm using Americana bleach sand for his hat brim and the edges of his features, and I'm going to give those 2 coats as well. I paint in all of the rest of the details with black. Oh, I just love doing these wee sketchy bits. I'm going to dry brush the edges with black here too to grunge him up a bit. And a little bit on his body, really faintly. Then he gets lightly sanded to distress too. I wanted a wee sign to hang off the end post of the fence. So I painted a wood circle black and then I painted a crescent moon on it with bleach sand. I add a few sparkling stars with Oyster white. And I paint Trick or Treat cascading down the moon with black. Dry brushing the black edge with Oyster, and I will dry brush the Oyster edge with black. And will lightly sand. Also, I did add a bit of orange dry brush to the Trick or Treat sign just to pull that color in. We'll attach our elements with wood glue. and hot glue. I'm adding a wee shim behind the jack-o'-lantern so that he sits just in front of the cat. I drilled a hole in the trick-or-treat sign, threaded some black hemp cord through it, and tied on a scrap of fabric and slipped it right over the end signpost. Almost forgot I glued the number 31 to the other end post, and as always, I'll spray it with clear matte sealer. Here's a final look at my thrifted Halloween classic DIY. As I mentioned, I always loved both that bestial cat and the jack-o'-lantern. I just always was fascinated by them. So I'm very excited that I finally got to use them in a decor piece. I want to thank Dawn, Lisa, Zana, Jody, and Annie for inviting me to participate. I'm truly honored to be included with such clever, talented creators who I'm lucky enough to call friends. You'll find links to their channels along with the playlist link and a list of my supplies in the description box. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.